Welcome to today's explainer. Think of me as your personal linguistic tour guide. Look, if you've ever stared at an English worksheet and felt like you were trying to solve some chaotic, impossible puzzle, you are absolutely not alone. English is famous for its quirks, its hidden rules, and vocabulary that just seems to change its meaning on a whim. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret. It's actually deeply logical once you can spot the structures hiding underneath. In this explainer, we're going to make sense of all those quirks by breaking our source material down into really clear mental frameworks. We're giving you the exact tools you need before you even think about tackling those worksheets. Here is our quick roadmap for today. First, tricky phrasal verbs. Second, categorizing job vocabulary. Third, first versus second conditionals. Fourth, modals of past obligation. And fifth, we'll wrap up with a game-changing study tip. All right, let's dive right into neighborhood number 1, tricky phrasal verbs. To wrap your head around these, I want you to use what I call the chemical compound analogy. Think about chemistry for a second. When you mix two different elements together, you usually get a substance with entirely new properties, right? Like mixing two invisible gases and suddenly getting liquid water. Well, phrasal verbs work exactly the same way. You take a super common verb, like come or make, you add a tiny little particle like about, along, or across, and boom, you've got a completely new meaning on your hands. Because that little particle changes the core meaning entirely, you can't just translate the word come and then translate the random word next to it. That's a trap. The secret is you have to learn each combination as its own separate expression. Let's actually track these massive changes to see how this works. Take the base verb come. On its own, it really just implies movement towards something. But the second we combine it, the whole vibe shifts. Come about suddenly means to happen, usually by chance, like a huge business merger coming about after two CEOs just happened to bump into each other. Come along, that means to develop or make progress, like a project coming along nicely. Come under completely shifts gears. It means being subjected to something negative, like a politician coming under heavy criticism. And come off can mean dirt being removed from your shoes or a wildly complex surprise party happening successfully without a hitch. You can really see why trying to memorize these as distinct units is absolutely crucial. Let's look at a real-world example. She came across a beautiful antique lamp at the flea market. Now, she didn't physically walk across the top of the lamp, right? That'd be ridiculous. Because we paired come with across, the new chemical compound means she found it by chance. Or, if you use it to describe a person, it means giving a certain impression, like someone who comes across as super shy but is actually hilarious once you get to know them. And this compounding effect gets even wilder with other common verbs like make and do. Just look at the massive swings in meaning here. Make out means to understand something with difficulty, like barely being able to read someone's messy handwriting. But make up, that could mean inventing an excuse for being late or reconciling with your best friend after a silly argument. Then we've got do away with, which is really just a fancy way of saying abolish or get rid of, like an airline doing away with free checked bags. And finally, make off with. If someone makes off with your laptop, they haven't just built it, they've straight up stolen it and run away. The core takeaway here, treat every single phrasal verb you encounter as a brand new, unique vocabulary word. Moving right along to section 2, categorizing job vocabulary. Now, here's a really common hurdle. How do you actually avoid confusing similar trades? When you're staring at a massive list of jobs you need to learn, they all just kind of blur together, don't they? Well, we solve this by applying a highly practical framework. The trick is to stop trying to memorize one giant, endless list. Instead, our source guide neatly organizes occupations into 3 distinct buckets based on the actual kind of work they involve. First up, we have skilled trades. These are your hands-on, making and repairing things jobs. Second, public-facing services, roles that deal directly with clients, like booking holidays or handling goods. And third, public sector or specialist roles, which is a bucket that covers everything from a civil servant doing government administration to a priest performing ceremonies, all the way to a farmer raising crops. By just taking a job title and placing it into one of these 3 buckets in your mind, you have literally done half the work of remembering what it means. Let's zoom in on those skilled trades for a second. Notice how if you anchor the trade to its specific material or system, you will basically never get them confused again. A carpenter deals with wood. A mechanic deals with engines. A plumber handles water pipes and heating. An electrician is all about wiring and power systems. So when you're testing yourself later, don't just ask, what is a plumber? Ask yourself, who handles the water pipes? Building that logical connection creates a much, much stronger memory hook. All right, on to section 3, first versus second conditionals. Getting this comparison right will absolutely level up your English. Let's start with the first conditional. I want you to think of this side as reality. It's used for genuine, highly possible, likely situations in the present or the future. The structure is super strict. If plus the present simple, followed by will plus the base verb. For example, if the flight is delayed, I will call you. Now contrast that with the second conditional. Think of this one as the parallel universe. It's for imagined, highly unlikely, or completely hypothetical situations. Over in this universe, the formula shifts. It's if plus the past simple, followed by would plus the base verb. If I spoke 5 languages, I would apply for that job. Notice how the grammar literally shifts backward in time to show how distant the situation is from reality. Now, what happens if you try to mix these two universes together? Well, you get chaotic, totally incorrect sentences. Take a listen to these. If it happens, it would be a problem. Or, if it happened, it will be a problem. Hearing those might make your brain hurt just a little bit, right? And that's because we are clashing the reality universe directly with the parallel universe. You've got a present simple clashing with a would, and a past simple clashing with a will. It's grammatical oil and water. So here is the absolute golden rule you need to take away from this guide. Pick a lane and never mix the two halves. If you want the first conditional, keep both halves firmly in reality. If it happens, it will be a problem. If you want the second conditional, keep it entirely in the hypothetical lane. If it happened, it would be a problem. Just choose your reality and stick to the formula for that specific reality. Up next, Section 4, Modals of Past Obligation. Both of these expressions talk about having an obligation in the past, but they answer completely different questions. With had to, you're stating a concrete, undeniable fact. It describes a real obligation or necessity that absolutely 100% happened. We had to show our passports at the border. It was necessary, and it occurred. On the flip side, was supposed to or were supposed to is all about unfulfilled expectations. It describes what was planned or arranged, but it strongly implies that reality turned out quite differently. Here's a perfect example of how that works. The bus was supposed to leave at 8, but it left 20 minutes late. It was on the schedule, it was totally expected, but reality shifted. The simple, fail-proof test here is this. If you're talking about a plan that changed, use was supposed to. If you genuinely, unavoidably completed the task, use had to. And finally, Section 5, the final study tip. Listen, when you go to check your worksheet answers and you inevitably find a mistake because, hey, we're all human, please do not go back and reread the entire study guide from start to finish. That is a massive waste of your cognitive energy. Instead, I want you to do targeted reviews. Jump straight back to the specific concept in the guide that matches the exact question you missed. Just reread that one focused framework before moving on. It is infinitely more efficient, and it helps reinforce exactly where your personal blind spots are. And just like that, our tour is a wrap. You now have the frameworks to decode those tricky phrasal verbs, categorize occupations logically, perfectly align your conditionals, and master your past obligations. So the final question I want to leave you with today is this. Which linguistic neighborhood are you going to conquer first on your worksheet? Pick your starting point, trust the structures we've built today, and happy learning.